You are 29. Ryan graduated near the top of his engineering program, the kind of person who solves complex technical problems for a living, comfortable with data, comfortable with logic. His coworker Emma, equally sharp, has a master's degree and a job that requires constant analytical thinking every single day. Neither of them would ever call themselves bad with money. Yet both of them are about to make the exact same mistake almost everyone makes eventually, smart or not, prepared or not. You are 29, a few months later. Ryan's friend mentions a stock that's been climbing fast, up 60% in 2 months. Everyone at his gym suddenly talking about it between sets. Ryan, normally cautious about everything else in his life, puts in $8,000 without doing the research he'd normally insist on before buying so much as a used car. 2 months later, the stock drops 40% in a single bad week. Ryan tells himself it's temporary, just a correction. It isn't. You are 30. Emma watches a coworker brag at lunch about doubling his money in cryptocurrency over a single weekend, practically glowing with excitement. She's read entire textbooks on statistics in graduate school, understands risk and probability better than most people in the building. She invests anyway, chasing the same feeling everyone else seems to be chasing, not the actual math sitting right there in front of her. The intelligence that helps her every day at work doesn't automatically transfer to decisions made from excitement instead of careful analysis. You are 31. Ryan reads a study almost by accident one evening, buried inside an unrelated article about behavioral economics, that stops him cold mid-scroll. Intelligence predicts almost nothing about financial behavior, the study claims. In some cases, smarter people actually make certain money mistakes more often, not less, because they're simply better at constructing convincing reasons for decisions they'd already emotionally wanted to make long before the reasoning ever showed up. You are 32. Ryan starts noticing the pattern in himself in real time, almost uncomfortably so. He doesn't buy the stock because he did rigorous, careful analysis beforehand. He buys it first, then immediately builds a smart-sounding argument afterward to justify why he'd already decided. The intelligence isn't preventing the mistake at all. It's just making the mistake sound more reasonable after the fact, dressed up in language that sounds objective. You are 33. A financial advisor Ryan consults for an unrelated retirement question tells him something that quietly reframes everything he thought he understood. The smartest people in the room are often the easiest people to convince, including by themselves, because they're genuinely skilled at building airtight-sounding cases for almost any conclusion they already want to reach. Being good at reasoning doesn't mean reasoning toward the truth. It just means reasoning persuasively, sometimes to yourself first, before anyone else ever hears it. You are 34. Ryan tests something deliberately, almost like an experiment on himself. Before making any financial decision over a certain size, he writes down the actual reason on paper first, before checking whether the market or the opportunity genuinely supports it. More than half the time, his stated reason turns out to be some version of excitement, fear of missing out, or simply wanting to feel clever, dressed up carefully in financial language that sounds far more objective than it actually is underneath. You are 35. Emma, hearing about Ryan's experiment over coffee, tries it herself, skeptical at first that it would reveal much of anything. She's genuinely stunned by how often her own analysis was actually a justification written well after the emotional decision had already quietly been made in the background, sometimes minutes earlier, sometimes days before she ever sat down to reason it out on paper. You are 36. Ryan builds a simple rule for himself after months of testing. Any investment decision has to wait a full 48 hours from the moment he first feels excited about it. No exceptions, regardless of how good the reasoning sounds in the heat of the moment. Most of the excitement fades naturally somewhere in that window. The decisions that still make sense to him after 48 hours have passed are the only ones he actually acts on. You are 38. Ryan's portfolio, built almost entirely on boring, well-researched decisions made only after the initial excitement wore off, quietly outperforms nearly every impulsive trade he made back in his 20s, without a single dramatic moment along the way. Emma adopts a similar 48-hour rule after watching his results play out steadily for over a year, cutting her own impulsive trades by more than half almost immediately. You are 40. A younger analyst on Ryan's team, clearly brilliant, mentions an exciting new investment opportunity at lunch one day, talking fast, already halfway convinced before he's even finished his sentence. Ryan doesn't argue with the underlying logic, which actually sounds reasonable enough on its surface. He just asks one simple question instead. How long have you been thinking about this? The analyst pauses, caught slightly off guard. Since this morning. Ryan nods slowly and says nothing else. He doesn't really need to. Here's what almost nobody tells you about smart people and money. Intelligence is genuinely excellent at solving problems, once you've correctly identified what the actual problem even is in the first place. But it's just as good, maybe even better, at constructing a convincing story around a decision your emotions had already quietly made for you long before the thinking started. A smart brain doesn't reliably stop bad financial decisions from happening. It just makes them sound significantly more sophisticated on the way in, which is arguably worse. The people who consistently avoid the worst money mistakes usually aren't the smartest people in the room, and they'd probably be the first to admit it. They're the ones who've learned, often the hard way, to distrust their own certainty in the heated moment, who've built in a deliberate delay, a pause, a rule that simply doesn't care how convincing the reasoning happens to feel right now. They've learned that feeling sure of something and actually being right about it are two completely different experiences that happen to feel identical from the inside, every single time. If you've ever made a financial decision you later couldn't fully explain, despite feeling completely rational and clear-headed at the time, this is probably exactly why. Subscribe if you want to see exactly how to build a simple system that catches you before your smartest-sounding excuse quietly turns into your most expensive mistake yet.